Okay, I'd like to call to order the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District November Board meeting. Before we get started, I would like to propose a quick agenda change. You will find in front of you a new request for board action, district liability insurance coverage waiver. I propose that we create action item 7B to cover this liability coverage waiver. And I will need a motion to add it to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Order number 2, I'd like to see a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving forward to the consent agenda. Remember, these are items that are going to be approved with one motion. We can have a motion on the table and still discuss them. So do I have a motion to approve all items in the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve all items in consent agenda.
Wonderful. Do I have a second?
Second.
Open the floor for discussion. Any questions, clarifiers before we vote? Wonderful. All in favor to approve the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay, and all abstain, say abstain. Okay, everything on the consent agenda passes. Moving forward to visitor comments. I don't believe I see visitors.
No, Kristen's here for a cost share and Tori and Tracy.
Yeah, attorney.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Moving on to regulatory programs. Let's cover applications.
Yeah.
Sorry, Harry.
Already coming up, yeah. So we just have one permit that was removed from the consent agenda due to a variance request. So it's in Woodbury on Wood Lane. They're proposing to do a 4-to-3 lane conversion road project. So it's along the Wood Lane corridor. They did trigger flood control, but that's being met with compensatory storage. They also are requesting a variance. The road itself is already in the buffer in several areas. You'll note in the variance, they say they propose not to do anything in certain wetland buffers because that's areas of the road they're not doing any disturbance to. So like, we're not gonna disturb it, but it is in the buffer. But there's one area that will be disturbing the buffer to add a trail. They would still like to proceed with the trail work to make it a safe corridor for the public, but they're proposing a reinforced soil slope to lessen the impact to the buffer. And then they've provided a pretty robust like wetland buffer replanting plan as well with their variance request for this project.
I'm uncertain about, so everything makes sense in my eyes with the path and want to protect pedestrians for sure. Little curious, their proposed updates to the buffer outside of the planting. I'm less familiar with what a reinforced soil slope means and what's its effectiveness.
Yeah, that actually came up too during permit review, what it is, and it's kind of going to be a steeper slope, and so it's reinforced as it has like permanent soil stabilization techniques, like if you think of like a turf reinforcement mat when it's like permanently stabilized with plastic. And so this is a similar instance, but not using that same product, where it's just using, I guess, more engineered enforcement measures to keep it stabilized. It's more steep. And then it has like a different seed mix, so it's appropriate for like the shoulder of a road for like visual sighting and things like that.
Do you know if the engineered products are degradable? So once all the vegetation is fully established, is there going to be some kind of a polyethylene, whatever?
I don't believe so. I think it's more about how they build the slope than the products being used. So maybe turf reinforcement mat wasn't a good example. It's an engineered practice on the slope to make it more safe, I guess I would say. Brandon, I don't know.
Yeah, they're typically synthetic materials that go back into the slope to prevent the slope from sliding. A lot of those materials are such that the vegetation grows up through it, but the material that's within the slope stays in place.
So it still allows for absorption and do we have other examples within our watershed in which we've used a reinforced slope?
Well, we have,
Or a project that we've approved?
Yeah.
I tried Googling it, I just didn't get a lot of return from.
The road project by West Badness where they redid, I'm blanking on the road name right now, they added the trail.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Right, thank you.
They had a steep slope there right next to the wetland where they did a similar project where they used to look at that for the steepness of the slope. Right where that liquor store and Taco Bell are. Forget the name of the road.
I think it's bad.
that have bad in the.
Boulevard.
Yeah, I think it's bad.
Yeah.
So the change in seating. Can you say a little bit more about that? In terms of
Yeah.
Density and height and so forth, that would be able to retain runoff if you got a steeper slope.
Yeah, we looked into that short grass roadside seed mix they proposed because I don't see that as frequently, but it does still have all native vegetation with that deeper root system. So we did have that conversation and it still would have the root system available to absorb that water and withstand flow coming over the slope. And then there will be like, the curb line in front of the slope, so it won't be seeing a lot of sheet flow, just kind of what falls on the slope is flow.
Okay, that's helpful.
So the overall amount of buffer compared to the road it's replacing is reducing in this one area with the walkway. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Diagrams.
I don't have the exact numbers, but yeah, it's already in the buffer. The trail is an addition in the buffer, but then this reinforced slope is trying to like mitigate some of that original road encroachment.
And since they're going from 4 to 3 lanes, is the actual road width better to, curb to curb changing, or, getting smaller, or are they going to use that horizontal space of 4 lanes differently, wider shoulder and left-hand turn lane or something like that?
I do believe it's decreasing the amount of impervious overall on this project. And so, but they still had reconstructed impervious surface, so they still had to provide stormwater treatment through that filtration basin. So it is decreasing slightly, but I think with the addition of some trails, it's not maybe as significant as like they don't have to treat anything. Yeah.
But they are narrow.
But it's narrowing the roadway, yeah.
So narrowed roadway, but the imperviousness increase comes from the
Trail work.
But overall, you said it's
Overall.
A net decrease
Net.
overall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
on the right direction.
Yeah.
yeah, right direction.
Mhm.
I don't have any further questions outside of, we've taken advantage of some of these linear projects to partner in ways for conveyance. Is there anything that requires or any possibilities? And if you don't have an answer now, that's perfectly fine. I'm just kind of curious. It's quite a long runway through our watershed district. There's been a lot of partnership with the culvert and seed, so I just was thinking.
There's not necessarily district managed water bodies upstream or that would cross this area in particular, so there's not necessarily an opportunity that we would.
Yeah, I was just looking in the north area, but yeah, that makes some sense. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve permit 2531? Or any further questions? Sir?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve permit, what is it, 2531?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussions or questions before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
I-
All opposed, say nay. All abstained, say abstain. Okay. Permits 2531 passes. Moving forward to the regulatory. You have quite a big update.
Yeah, so for the regulatory memorandum today, first I wanted that we threw in a photo of Elliot with Nicole's approval. So yeah, Elliot and Nicole stopped in the office this past month. It was really great to see Nicole, and Elliot was pretty adorable. We all got a chance to pass him around. So it was really great to see them, and they're both doing well. So I wanted to update you all on that. And then I did want to take the memorandum as a chance to update you on the height, since we had a discussion about that last month. So there's been a number of meetings, on-site visits, email correspondence about the project. You know, it's pretty detailed in this report, but I would just say, like, overall, as a summary, conversations were helpful, and I think the project steered in the right direction. They certainly seem to be taking it a lot more seriously, and they are more proactive with their inspections and maintenance and follow-up. And so it does seem like it was a meaningful intervention that we had. And I think we're maybe more prepared to intervene quicker if this does become a problem again. And I think it was helpful to hear what exact tools we have for that going forward. So just some photo examples of the site improvements. And then I'm continuing to, visit the site fairly often just to keep them accountable going forward.
Thank you for your leadership in this. Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, I want to give Mary a lot of kudos for her work on this. She was just really top notch in working with them, holding hands, and but also being, pretty stern on what needed to be done, and she's done an excellent job.
100%.
I'd like to echo that too. I mean, it's just really helpful to have, clients that are working so diligently and being so accurate, not judgmental. It's hard not to get judgmental, but really takes a firm hand, but just towing the line on what just really needs to be done. And it was a really good effort. Really appreciate it.
I'm happy to see that the other enforcement agencies are also.
Yeah, so the MPCA is involved, and I think they will be involved going forward. And then I've been having a lot of close collaboration with the city of St. Paul, and we've been doing inspections together and doing a lot of just kind of weekly check-ins with each other.
It's pretty obvious from the memo, and at least it seems to be obvious, that the Port Authority recognizes the importance of maintaining compliance. I guess the complexity of the site, has been, and will continue to be a project of multiple contractors and subcontractors below Port Authority. And at this point, do you feel that those major contractors and subcontractors are also getting it? Do they have certified inspectors that are all present and doing daily logs? And so everything really seems to be righted the ship and full steam ahead.
Yeah, I think the complexity of the site and how many people are involved is what kind of led to maybe their non begin with. And this is, all this work was for the public portion of the project, so the Port Authority's portion. There are already private lots like the Excel site and the Habitat for Humanity site that I've been dealing with separately. I'd say both of those contractors are, very well experienced, know what you have to do, and have been, I've been checking their inspection logs as well. So there's a lot of oversight of they're meeting the minimum requirements for inspections, being knowledgeable about erosion sediment control. It's just a matter of understanding how to ramp up EMPs in a rainy season. You can't rely on maybe what you typically would in a more regular season, and just trying to really ingrain that in the contractors' minds, that you don't just have to rely on your typical BMPs. And it's been an ongoing educational experience for them. I'm trying to educate them, but also keep them honest that they have their own responsibilities, and we're not here to always just educate them. They're supposed to know these things on their own as well. So I don't think it's done yet. I think they'll be on the site a lot more often, but it does seem to feel like a lot of that weight has been lifted. Okay, we're all on the same page, it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Mary's really been good about like really getting them to think proactively and not reactively, as we've been, they've done.
That's where we want to be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good job. Elliot looks a lot like his father. Maybe that's just right. So, please pass that.
I think she made it.
Let's jump to stewardship grant programs. After you, Ashley.
Yeah, we pulled one application off the consent agenda, particularly because it is a little bit unique in that it's type that we see. This project is in the city of Woodbury. The city is redeveloping or adding on to the city's public safety building. You guys saw their permit application last month, which was approved with special provisions. So just a recap for what is part of the grant process is that they're proposing 13,800 square feet of heated surfaces, a variety of sidewalks and pavement. A good portion of these will be public facing, so will be accesses where the public is coming in and out, so it'll be in high visibility areas. The location is located within the Battle Creek Lake subwatershed and directly drains through the Tamarack Nature Preserve. And so this area is impaired for chlorides. And so that's kind of our focus here, is the chloride reduction. And so we'll see later today, the chloride reduction strategy that's being proposed. But in the meantime, the way that we are currently evaluating chloride reduction grants is that very similar to water quality priority drainage areas. We've put our watershed that have impaired waters within that, if they're impaired for chloride, within a priority category. So if it's an impaired water body, that subwatershed is then a high priority for chloride funding. If it's an at-risk subwatershed, then that would be a lesser priority. So that's how we're currently evaluating that. That is subject to change, obviously, as we go through the strategy process. But in the meantime, that's where we're at. And so using the similar guidelines under the water quality BMPs, we are recommending 100% funding up to $100,000. This is about 18% of the total cost of the system. And so it's not new technology, but it is, as chlorides become so prevalent, and something that we're actively trying to reduce and not have to mitigate for. We are looking at what kind of information we can get from this project to either justify continuing to support these types of projects or reevaluating it as we go through the strategy. And so I have talked with city staff, and we do have Kristen online here to answer any questions, but we'll work with the city to kind of get a better understanding of what their system looks like. They do currently already have 2 systems in place. One of them has been in place for years, I think since 06-ish, which has been expanded upon in recent years. So it's the city is familiar with these systems. They know how to maintain them. So the kind of special provisions are a little TBD, but that would be staff and BAR working with city staff to understand what kind of information we can actually gather. We've suggested a kind of essentially what we're trying to get out of it, which will be tracking usage and then some costs for operations and maintenance, and then potentially observations. So maybe a parking lot camera that's capturing before, during, and after snow events to see how do the heated surfaces actually work, where is salt being applied. The city of Woodbury is going above and beyond with these surfaces. And so I got some fun numbers. I think the other question we had highlighted too was costs. And so the total cost for the project is about $61 million. And so the heated surfaces are a pretty small drop in the bucket at just over 550,000. And so we'll be working to kind of get a better understanding too of how does the cost of this BMP compare to other stormwater BMPs that were put on the site. So stuff we're working on actively with the city, and we'll have that in place before any reimbursement requests would come in. So yeah, and then I'll just note, this prioritization strategy definitely is subject to change as we work through the strategy document, but otherwise staff are recommending approval up to that $100,000.
I like to see in the design review and related recommendations some of the feedback we've given about heated sidewalks over the years kind of integrated in. It was quite nice. I didn't see anything really clear about training, but I assume given their prior, they know. Yeah,
I think almost all their staff's already trained. And so that's, definitely, if they're not, then we'll look at that too. But
So, hi, Kristen, just a question. Is there a possibility, I love the interest and applaud the actions of promoting the heated sidewalks. So it's not just staff, I think that staff changes all the time. And sometimes one staff member is maybe a little bit more cautious, it's salt out, it's icy out there, how do we get this out? So I was just wondering, in some places there's use of signage or I don't know, different colors on the heated parts of the sidewalk that might indicate that this is special and different. I don't know that it would be at a huge cost, putting some dye in the cement. But I was just wondering if that's possible, just as a visual for the staff that goes through that area, and also for staff might be aware of it, but perhaps not the public who's going in and out. And so just a question, is that a possibility for consideration?
Yeah, I can answer that. And sorry if I'm a little distracted. It's like witching hours for the dogs today. So the foster puppy and my dog are like needing my attention most. But so for heated sidewalks, the pavement color, I'm not sure that conversation's been had, and I'm happy to pose the question to other staff. I know we have a couple just heated pavements colored pavements in other applications, and it does become like a long-term maintenance of if it needs to be repaired, patched, you're extending how much you have to do it instead of if you have just kind of standard coloration. That's not a no. I just know that that's probably the first answer I'm going to get when I ask that question. We've been working to do more education on like the different BMPs we have at City Hall. For example, the watershed supported us hiring a graphic designer. We put that in a story map, and we're looking to expand that to our other facilities. Central Park, Public Safety, and Public Works are all kind of close by. So doing that and making sure that like education of the equipment and the technology is in place. And then for staff turnover, we retrain all of our staff every year, kind of reevaluate that. So if new staff have come in, we're able to educate them at the right level along with the retrainings. And I know last time we were here talking about this, it was pointed out of like, having the bucket by the door is a little inviting. So people, either members of the public or other staff in different capacities, might take it and apply chloride to the pavement that's not needed. So a couple different components, I think, to answer your question. But I can definitely bring the colored pavement suggestion or question back to the team.
And then just a follow-up question, there are some recommendations here that the city should track usage, operations, and maintenance with photos and stuff. So on top of your other duties, how likely do you think that is, that someone could do that?
Yeah, and we've talked a little bit about this with watershed staff. I think the photos likely possible. The installation of this one is obviously out a couple years. We're going to be going into construction later or early next year. And it's a pretty hefty build for that price tag. So we can definitely talk about, getting photos from existing surveillance cameras, kind of security that we have at our buildings to help demonstrate that. And we have to talk about more conversations to come with our maintenance staff to figure out how do we tease, maintenance of the system proportionate to the heated sidewalk part versus, heated building and other things that we'd be maintaining either way. So we're definitely open to contributing to the watershed's continuation of that kind of understanding. But it's not concrete yet. No pun intended.
And one final question, for the 13,000 or 13,800 square feet, of heated pavement, how much salt do you think that would use in a typical winter season?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure if I have the answer to that.
A lot.
It's upon the applicator,
Yeah.
sorry to say.
Yeah, we did talk about, using that kind of modeling what that would be for like what we would recommend usage for that size of space. So I mean, I think that's a number we can come up with.
Okay.
Yeah, I think at this point, our conclusion is that any grain of salt is a pollutant.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm.
But yeah, no,
just,
we've had those same questions, and how do we, I think
I
that's,
think we can calculate something.
yeah.
I'm gonna save this for some of the chloride discussion, but to build on what Stephanie's saying, I like the pictures, I like those types of things, the outcome is you're trying to reduce the overall chloride, so I'm just trying to figure out, are we measuring appropriately at the location where we think it's gonna come in?
And that's to some extent what we're trying to get out of the heated sidewalk installation, like the ones they already have, is what are we saving, what are we reducing, and can we even track that? So obviously, we've talked about this too. I'm getting some of our conversations mixed, but between the chloride reduction strategy and this application, and looking at how we can get as much information to be able to make the best decisions. So
Seems like the Tamarack Wildlife Area is a great place to potentially look into it since it's adjacent, but
Well, yeah, that one is near and dear to my heart, but
Mhm.
just, I mean, the other thing that I do wish is we do a lot of good work at the city and in the watershed district, and I just think that if there's any opportunity to relay that, so that there's a public awareness going switch on, switch off, that this is happening, I think that if there's an opportunity to take advantage of that, that's what I'm looking for, is the educational opportunity.
Yeah, and I hear what Val's saying, and I think that there's an interesting and worthwhile an intersection between decision on this project and probably more broadly that chloride reduction strategy. I just want to state here that looking at the figure, I see this as a real opportunistic kind of, you've got some pavement on the north side, you've got some on the southwest, some on the south and southeast. So from a sun exposure, prevailing wind, all those kind of environmental conditions, this, and it's fairly large in terms of the amount of sidewalk. This is a great place to collect some real, I think, valuable data that I would suggest, maybe not in this conversation, but later on, that could be very useful in other places. So I think this is a worthwhile project. I think there's a lot of opportunities to grow the concept or inform the concept in other ways, and we ought to tap into that opportunity.
I agree. It's a good discussion. Sounds like from the tone of the conversation, we're all generally on board, excited to see what it is, and want to capitalize for both the city and our learning. Do I have a motion to approve stewardship grant 2553?
Can I ask one question before we move to vote?
Of course.
You're talking about requiring the tracking. Are you entering into some type of agreement for a length of time? I think it's all a worthwhile project, but so far we're just acting on faith, and it's a sizable investment. I mean, what stipulation, what level of documentation are you going to require before you say, yes, this is acceptable in our eyes?
Yeah, so we will have an agreement in place, a little bit to be determined, like I said, we wanna keep it open enough so that we can make sure we have the data, but yes, basically the language is going to say that it will only be reimbursed upon receiving the data we request. To some extent, we're not entirely sure what kind of data we're going to get, and it'll be out of those existing projects before this one is actually constructed, likely. And so working the timing of what do we want maybe from those past projects that are already installed and working, and then what do we want to see in the new project? And there's a potential there, I think, for like maybe the new project to not be within this grant agreement. But once they've demonstrated with the existing sites. So I think it's a little bit flexible, but there will be an agreement in place. Tentatively going to city council at their December council meeting, pending some fast work on all of our parts to meet and get some of these details figured out.
And just a reminder, our standard grant agreement is for 20 years, so saying that they will have this in place, maintain it.
Yeah.
We won't make them probably monitor for 20 years,
Yeah.
but
The agreement will
that
sit for
gives us-
20 years.
yeah.
It just seems like there's a lot of open-endedness, and this is premature at this time without knowing what they're agreeing to and just giving staff the ability to agree to whatever is decided.
That's fair, and to some extent, it's reimbursement based, so they will have to pay for it and install it, and then ask for reimbursement. So I think, if some of that good faith is lost for some reason under the agreement, or if it's not defined well enough, the watershed district has the ability to say you didn't meet the criteria of your agreement, and we want to reimburse this, and we will come back and ask for additional information. So I don't think that's where it's gonna go. And we definitely wanna have enough definitive language to successfully like have the project and execute a reimbursement for it. So yeah, that's a good
It
point.
just
It
seems
is-
like there should be some type of stipulation that the board sees the agreement
I was gonna,
prior to like actual reimbursement. Since the chloride reduction plan is an upcoming topic and we don't know what those goals and objectives are yet, it just seems like, to me, is that something,
I was curious to build on that. Is it possible, so you're going to hopefully the city council in December, could we per se see it in the project summary report? What the outcome was?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, it'll be essentially our standard agreement form with just a couple of added sentences about stipulations. And then if we need to change formatting for the city, sometimes the municipalities have a little bit extra sheets for signage and those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, it'll be the standard template and then with additional language for those special stipulations.
I mean, I think one thing just that I'll add is that the information we want to gather from them is for our benefit, to help us with our future goals. It's not like if it doesn't work, we're not going to reimburse, or they have to monitor in order to get the money for that purpose. It's more for our understanding and learning as we move forward.
I totally love that. I think the way that I internalized Ben's comment, it's a little bit of a risk share from us, and then they're taking it on. But I think the partnership's more important, which is
Right.
where I'm more comfortable with going in good faith. But it's always nice to trust but verify.
Yep.
Does that satisfy your comment then, do you think, if they publish the agreement as part of the project review section?
I think so.
I think that gives some good faith there. If it's overwhelmingly different, I trust that the you guys will bring it up and we should talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Absolutely.
No, I totally trust the staff, and
Yeah.
I don't think they're doing anything
Or I
in
didn't.
bad faith. I just.
I didn't internalize it either. It is definitely open-ended, and I think it'll change as we talk about the chloride strategy. Frankly, because it's a large sum of money.
Yeah. So I will say staff have also felt that same way about the open-endedness, and we've asked a lot of questions back to Kristen. She's been great trying to answer them. But yeah, happy to bring that back to you guys.
That would be our ask.
Yeah, okay.
So, do we have an approval or do a motion to approve application 2553, grant application 2553?
I'll move that the grant application be approved with the agreement to be posted later in a board packet.
Appreciate it. Anyone second?
Second.
Cool. Any further discussion? Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. That's a good proposal, Ben. Thank you. Jumping to the budget status update.
Yes, okay, let's see here. Nothing super exciting. We have a few more applications that have come in since this has already gone into the packet, so we'll be on schedule to use up a good chunk of the budget and or at least allocate most of the budget as well. So consultant fees are a little lower. We haven't had as much, but I think that also contributes. I think we've mentioned before some staffing shortages. There we go. Coffee was a bad idea, but and so I think they've been a little bit less at Ramsey County in their billing, but the overall kind of requests have also kind of been down as well for site visits. So combination of a whole bunch of factors, but I'll take any questions.
No questions from me. It looks like you've already integrated the priority area, correct? The chloride.
Yep.
Any other questions for Ashley? Wonderful. Let's jump to action items 7A. I believe we have somebody here.
Yeah, that's you, Gareth. You can come on up.
So
Yeah.
for those, I guess the first one up here, this is the annual CIP for routine maintenance projects that the district does, but also sites that are brought to the district through the public entity cost share program. Gareth is BAR's project manager for this project this year, but also for the last several years. And so he is the guy behind the curtain that makes this all possible underneath this condensed time frame from the beginning, working with district staff, doing the inspections, identifying the sites, pulling the plans together, administering the bidding, responding to questions, and then working with Dave in the field through construction observation and administration. So with that intro, Gareth, if there's anything that the manager should know here high level, you go ahead and give him a summary, and he's got enough of details, so don't hold back on that.
Thanks, Brandon. Hello, everyone. So as far as what is in the packet, there was one small change. The city of Shoreview, upon seeing the estimate of cost, decided to move one pond from 2026 CIP to next year, 2027, to meet their budget allocation. So what's in the packet and what's in front of you on paper is off by about $20,000 from just dropping that one site. So the updated numbers are shown in here. Essentially, the engineer's opinion of probable cost, $1,233,100. Again, that was an extra $22,000 on top of that. And then the district responsibility, which includes mobilization and demobilization costs, is $272,100. And the amount to be reimbursed back to the district at the conclusion of the project is $961,000. So pretty heavily on the PEX program, or the public entity cost share, compared to traditionally. So the last 3 years, that's really just ramped up that amount that gets reimbursed to the district. Trace it back to the presentation that Paige gave at the SEAM conference, where a lot of municipalities became aware of this program.
I have a question about the cost estimates.
Yeah.
Is that I'm wondering, in large part, what it's based upon. Is it size, type of resource?
Yeah.
You know, if it's kind of a dry swale versus a wet pond, and then contaminate.
Yeah.
Or other things I'm not thinking about. Can you say a little bit about that, Gary?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks. So the CIP is amalgamation of a bunch of different sites, right? So it's all these different maintenance items. So the costs are directly related to each site, that what the work is at that site. So for example, paver sweeping of the PFS basins, it's one that we do basically every year, that we have very specific costs that are tied to that based on years and years of getting bids on them. So we take the averages from the last year, kick out some outliers, and use those costs for the same bid items. Other sites, like in the PEX program, they're new every year. So we go and we survey the sites and collect sediment samples on those sites and do an inspection. Dave and I typically do these. And then we work with the municipalities or the public entities, county sometimes, to scope out the project. And then we build it out, create a volume of material to be removed, determine access, where it's going to be, how many mud mats, how much erosion control is going to be needed, and build the cost estimate off of that. So for the most part, it's going off previous bids for the similar work from previous years.
That helps a lot. Thank you.
Do we typically have the same competitor or competition interested in the bid?
Yeah, good question. It has, I think, 6 out of the last 7 years has been the same contractor who wins it. Significantly lower cost than some of the competitors. But going back before that, historically, it's different every year almost. We do get a lot of the same players, and the number of bidders varies wildly based on market conditions at the time or how busy they are over the winter. It's kind of a bonus project for a lot of them when they're during their slower times. The reason we do it in the winter is to secure these better costs. And just easier to move frozen muck than wet muck.
In previous years, we've had a longer list of opportunities for CIP. How were these particular ones prioritized?
For the district.
For the district. Thank you.
Oh yeah, based off of our inspections. So we have a newish inspection tool. So we go out with the iPad and have some very clear criteria that we base things off of. Oh, this one for sure needs it. Take photos, compile ones that are marked for review, as well as a scoring system. So if they score high,
And for our district, is this an all-inclusive list, or are there ones that we couldn't get to?
This is everything that we identified for this year.
Great.
Some of them, it's like, yeah, could do something at this one, but it's really, let's wait and see. Or it's not affecting water quality at this point, so we'll give it another year or two. You'll notice the 5th and 7th Street weirs are missing from this one. That's one that's typically done annually, but we looked at it, it's like it's functioning okay, this can wait another year, let's just see what happens.
Okay.
So that kind of determination happens when we're doing the inspections.
Thank you.
So the one thing I want to note here in the memo regarding the schedule. The tentative bid opening is 1 week before the next board meeting. And so if that schedule hold, that makes it really difficult to get to review the bid results and get them into the next board packet. We typically put a lot of effort into getting bid results reviewed and into the board packet prior to the meeting. But with the coordination that happens with some of these other entities after this, the schedule may get condensed here for that bid opening. And so just looking at how the schedule comes out here, this may be one of those projects where the bid results come to the meeting. I just want to point that out here.
I think that's happened previously.
Yeah. Try to give you advance notice if we anticipate that happening. Try to avoid it if we can.
Any further questions on the CIP? Do Do I have a motion to approve the preliminary designs, estimated costs, and proposed project schedule, and direct staff to finalize the design and bidding documents and advertise the project for bid?
Second.
Any further questions or discussion before we vote? Perfect. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. You came out from behind the curtain.
It's been a long time coming. Since the beginning of my career in 2012, I started working for the district. So first time here, happy to get
Yeah,
here.
thank you. I just want to give praise to Dave and Gareth both. They put a lot of work into, it's a lot of coordination with all these different cities too, to do this work. And it's really satisfying to see that so many cities are interested in being part of this, because this is a real benefit to our water resources, and it's a lot of work.
We're gonna get paid to talk and more confident.
Well, I was gonna say, you know,
Well, tomorrow, I have one. We're doing our talk at Mod, you're be there, and we did at the Water Resources Conference. So yes, there's a lot of interest and a lot of, why does another water district?
and another praise for all that work that we do to share that information, as Capital Region is starting a program very similar. So I mean, they're, you know, really building on that.
Trend setting. I love it.
Yeah.
We have a new action 7B, the library liability coverage waiver. Sorry, I couldn't even read my own handwriting.
Yeah, this is an annual item. It's typically, I would put it in consent, but I didn't get the waiver form until after the packet went out. This is related to our League of Minnesota Cities events that covers us. We're a member of the LMCIT. So this basically has to be annually said that we do not waive the monetary limits on our liability. So we would hold to the 2 million. I see my cover sheet says 1.5, but it is 2 million. So that's an annual thing that they require us to do. So I've signed.
No, it's
If we
1.5.
don't waive,
Oh, did I miss?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
first bullet.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I was looking at I saw the 2 million. I was like,
You're good.
yes,
2 million
1.5.
catches an eye for sure.
Yeah. Yes. So I have signed it, but it does need to be approved by the board in order to be sent.
And we have traditionally done these, like you said, in the consent agenda. I
Yeah.
don't have a question. I'll leave it to others. Any questions about the form or coverage? Feel free to take a couple minutes to read it too. If you Your comments?
Pretty standard.
Do I have a motion to approve the liability coverage waiver form indicating the district does not waive the monetary limits on municipal tort liability?
Second.
Wonderful. All in favor, say aye.
I
All opposed, say nay. Abstain, say abstain. It passes.
Thank you.
I believe it's you, Tracy, attorney.
Is it my turn?
Yes,
Well, thanks. Good evening. I just want to report we had a pretty busy month. The first part, which I think you all realize we've discussed already, so I won't go into too much detail, but it was working with Mary and Tina on the Heights project, right? Making sure that they understood what the board's direction was and the ramifications of not getting in compliance with the abatement. So Lauren really took the lead on this, and she attended the meetings and drafted the letters in relation to the Heights. So again, thanks for giving us clear direction. It made our job a lot easier to make sure we made it clear what the board's direction was. And it was nice to have clear direction from the board so we could make that very clear to the St. Paul Port Authority and others. The other thing is that we reviewed some contracts, the data licensing agreement between the district and MidDOT, a cooperative agreement with St. Paul for pond maintenance as part of the 2026 CIP. And we did stormwater maintenance agreement for permit 2434 in Shoreview. So we were pretty busy this month, and really the Heights was the big focus for us. But otherwise, the other agreements we reviewed as part of what we typically do ongoing in these different projects.
That's great. Thank you, Tracy, and for the
Yeah.
recommendation and support last month's meeting. Sounds like you guys have got it under control.
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
Any questions for Tracy? Moving to board discussion topics. It's not so much one that I want to drain today, but you know, after reading the packet and doing some online research, it might be an interesting topic potentially for the future, especially if you think about planning. So let's just acknowledge that we live in a really urbanized area, and so buffers are going to consistently be impended, or we're going to get multiple requests for disturbances and potentially some additional ones where they're within the buffer. And I personally don't have enough background or understanding to really get a good sense of how much do you eat away before buffers become inefficient and ineffective. And so as an interesting conversation maybe for later, I'd love to propose on a future topic that we talk through maybe buffer efficiency or effectiveness. Because it seems to me whenever something pops off the consent agenda, because they know this board well, disturbances are typically ones that do pop them off the consent agenda. And I think it's just time we got to recognize they're going to happen. So I just want to understand more about it so we're informed when we discuss them better or in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Just to jump in, sorry.
Yeah.
But also, it kind of plays into rules a little bit too. I think Nicole has on her list, you know, to talk about what is a variance from that. You know, if the board is willing to think through some of that too. That's what pulls it off the consent is, you know, when there's a variance.
I think the rules, the discussion around it, just even today with the new buffer types, I don't know if have we done the research projects behind it? I just don't know. I don't understand. Don't have to drain. Any other topics for discussion? Okay. Moving to 10A, development of the district chloride management survey. I feel like I should give you a drum roll.
Yes, Tyler is back.
Appreciation.
I will warn you, I've spent a lot of time on various AI channels learning about this. I'm going to try to hold my questions for a little bit.
Be smarter than AI today.
Complimentary.
Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Tyler Wilson. I'm with BARF. I haven't met you before. I'm a water resources engineer, leading the efforts to develop the chloride reduction strategy moving forward after tonight, but wanted to provide an overview of what that development process is planned to look like. I would welcome input from you all as we've got a little bit of a teaser from Ashley's presentation. It's kind of ever evolving and a lot to wrap our heads around and brains around. And I think a lot of other watershed districts and management organizations are struggling and grappling with the same concept. So I think there's room for discussion and room for input at the stage that we're at. So I'll also highlight that it ties in really well with the update to the watershed management plan. So it's a really cool nexus, I think, of a lot of converging projects and timelines coming together. So I'll provide a little bit of background on chloride pollution and what information we have within the watershed district. I'll talk about different actions related to chloride management and reduction that the district has taken to date. We haven't been doing nothing. And then I'll talk about why are we developing this strategy? Where are we going and how are we going to get there with it? And then a high level overview of the approach to how we propose to approach chloride reduction, and then what next steps look like. And then there will be room for discussion at the end, but again, feel free to jump in with questions if you have them as I'm going here. So to level set a little bit, hopefully you don't need to spend too much time on this, but as we all probably know, chloride is a conservative pollutant. It does not degrade naturally. It does not filter out easily like phosphorus. We can't infiltrate it away because then it ends up in our groundwater, which then it also ends up back in our surface waters, as I have a map showing in the slide. So a really complex issue, lots of different pathways impacting not only surface water resources, but also drinking water and downstream water resources as well. Primary sources of chloride in the watershed district, mainly road salts being applied on roads and parking lots and sidewalks. Also water softeners for people that have those, that ends up in the wastewater, which wastewater treatment plants cannot remove chloride. And so that just is a flow through type system. And then the impacts of chlorides, it's harmful to aquatic life and plants. It alters, I think one of the biggest ones is it alters lake, pond, and wetland stratification. So we see, typically deeper water bodies can stratify on temperature, but chloride can prolong that stratification and, increase internal loading potentially, and just other secondary harmful impacts of chlorides. Chloride can impact soil health. I think this came up recently and is related to the water reuse opportunities, where if we have water bodies that we're trying to pull water from to reuse it for irrigation and improve water quality, we're finding limitations of that because we can't apply chloride-rich water to landscapes because it impacts the soil and it impacts the vegetation. So lots of negatives related to chloride pollution. So within the watershed district, we have a long history of monitoring information. Chloride, this is the map that Ashley was referring to, where we're showing priority areas based on chloride impairments in water bodies, and then also water bodies that are at risk of chloride impairment as defined by the MPCA. So you can see many of the water bodies within the district are either impaired or at risk. You'll note that the Beltline and then Pig's Eye and Blufflands are hatched because those drain ultimately to the Mississippi River, where we actually do have the benefit of dilution of chloride in the river, and that's not a district managed water body. But you can see the water bodies that are at risk or impaired, and then we also have long records of data, like I mentioned, and we can complete trend analysis using that data. And we're seeing some worsening trends in some of our lakes that aren't even on the impaired or at-risk categories yet, but we are seeing those chloride concentrations creep up over the years. And then just for some background information, the state does have standards for water bodies for chloride impairment. There's a chronic standard, which is more long-term. That's 230 milligrams per liter. And then there is an acute standard, so kind of a one-time maximum of 860 milligrams per liter chloride. A few years ago, the district started sampling chlorides specifically after ice out, so kind of early spring, trying to target when chloride concentrations might be the highest in these water bodies, when we're seeing that spring snowmelt and washing all the remaining salt off of the roads and impervious surfaces into the water bodies. And so this has been a really valuable data set to help hone in on, where we're seeing some of the highest loading to our water bodies. And so you can see, it's a little hard to read on the slide up on the screen here, but you can see the concentrations of those ice out monitoring events, and then the trends that we're calculating with that information for some of the water bodies. And then what's shown on red here are the ones that are already impaired. But then the blue dots are showing, concentrations that are almost reaching that acute standard that the MPCA is setting. So we're seeing those really high concentrations right after the snow starts to melt. And then maybe even more impressively, Eric and his team have been monitoring ponds at ice out every year. So these are a smattering of pond sampling that's happened over the past 4 years. Same time frame, early spring, but looking at trying to tease out, some of these lake sheds are really big. And so where in the lake shed might we see higher loading in some of the stormwater ponds, which are then connected to the lakes. So you can see pretty similar scenario where a lot of these concentrations are pretty high in the spring, but then we start to see some hot spots in some of the lake sheds. Like, for example, we had noted a pond was really, really high downstream of a highly impervious corridor that had car dealerships and other commercial properties. So helping to narrow in on some of those areas that we can then focus on reduction potentially, or outreach and education, things like that. Yeah, we've sampled almost 80 of the district's stormwater, 80% of the district's stormwater runoff points. So that's a really impressive feat. And we have no plans of stopping, hopefully. I don't think Eric's here to tell me no. So other actions we've taken to manage chloride to date, like I just mentioned, the monitoring, long-term blank monitoring in partnership with the county, and then that iced out sampling that's happening, that's also in partnership with the county. Communications and engagement, the Public Works Forum, I think chloride has been a topic in the past and is planned to be next year as well. As in addition to social media campaigns using information that the state has put out to help spread the message around chloride pollution. The grants, as we've heard about with the heated pavement grant, partnerships with different agencies, MPCA, working with their staff and utilizing all the materials that they've put out kind of in a coordinated effort. Met Council has a lot of data collection that they've done in the past. We've coordinated with University of Minnesota researchers who are looking into chloride pollution. Some really cool research happening out of the St. Anthony Falls Laboratory, as well as other watershed districts. You know, like I said at the beginning, this is not a Ramsey-Washington specific issue. And so a lot of watersheds, I think, are coming together collaboratively to kind of figure out how do we approach and how do we manage this big issue. And then around planning and modeling, something of note that we found as we started digging into developing the strategy to develop the strategy is that the current watershed management plan really doesn't mention chloride a lot. And so you can that is just a data point to show how much of a concern it's grown in the past 10 years. But there is some mention of like groundwater contaminants such as chloride in that plan. And I think as part of that, you know, one thing that the district did a few years ago is using the Met Council's groundwater model. We looked at groundwater and surface water modeling throughout the district to see which lakes might be receiving groundwater versus which lakes might be losing to groundwater. And so that is directly tied to chloride because chloride moves freely between surface water and groundwater. So we already have a sense of, you know, where some lakes might be could be being impacted by chloride-rich groundwater or vice versa. And there's other modeling, like the street sweeping model can be leveraged to look at chloride. So there is some things that have been done in the past, but we can re-leverage those tools and, you know, look at chloride specifically moving forward, which I'll talk about here in a few slides. So why do we need this strategy document? Like I said, the watershed management plan update is a great opportunity for us to define what chloride reduction goals the district would like to embrace. And then we can use the strategy to provide a framework for implementing those goals. So like I said, it's a really aptly timed development timeline for the strategy. We're seeing increased interest in implementing chloride reduction projects like the grant request from the city of Woodbury. Also, like I mentioned, the reuse projects are continuing to be a popular and of interest project from district partners. And so if chloride continues to be an issue, we need to figure out how we're going to continue to do those projects or recommend other projects. As I mentioned, the worsening trends in water bodies warrants addressing. We can't do nothing about that issue. We can also leverage a lot of the prioritization approaches and tools that have been developed for the district in the past few years and really be strategic about chloride reduction investment. I think that was one of the biggest topics in when Woodbury brought this application to the district and to our staff to consider is, you know, we can invest in this, but is it the right investment? Where else should we be investing? Are there areas in the district that might be more impactful to invest in for chloride reduction than others? So I think that's a question that hasn't been answered yet and could be with this strategy. And then there are external grants for chloride reduction. So the more we can highlight it in the plan and tie implementation strategies from the chloride reduction strategy to the plan, the more favorable our grant applications will be for those types of projects. And so at the bottom of this slide, I won't read it because I think I've said all these words multiple times already, but this is kind of our goal statement that we're working towards with developing this chloride reduction strategy, focusing on prevention, mitigation, as well as behavioral change throughout all of these implementation strategies. I don't know that I'll walk through this in too much detail, but as we were starting to figure out what this might look like, we developed this graphic to just kind of put it all on paper and envision the whole process all in one image. So, you know, moving from defining goals to looking at the data, looking at potential modeling tools to identify and narrow in on potential hotspots of chloride and where can we reduce chloride throughout the watershed district. And then developing this strategy, which, you know, ultimately is going to be these implementation items that we can tie back to the watershed management plan that span all the different program areas that the district operates in, including communications and engagement, the monitoring program, stewardship grants and projects, regulatory program, and then, you know, other projects and research opportunities that the district takes on. So now I'm going to step through kind of what we've outlined as tasks for developing the chloride reduction strategy, with the first or 0th task of being defining the goals for chloride reduction. And so this, through discussions with district staff, will be part of the watershed management plan update process as we're defining implementation strategy, or help me out with the terminology, Tina, the priority or
So we'll be prioritizing and then defining action items.
yeah, and like issue identification.
Right.
Yeah. So chloride reduction goals will be part of that process. And then the chloride reduction strategy, like I said, will be the framework for how we implement those goals. And then the first task that we have as part of developing this strategy is figuring out where we need to look for chloride reduction throughout the district. And so that'll involve looking at available information that we have, using monitoring data, using partner data, visualizing what we can through mapping, and then identifying priority areas through all of that kind of overlay and analysis. We can also use modeling tools to help predict at a high level chloride loads across the land use throughout the district. So for example, a water quality model was developed for the street sweeping prioritization study. That same model, we can use assumed chloride application rates to estimate chloride loads reaching those downstream water bodies. So the same way we estimated phosphorus in the street sweeping model, we can estimate chloride loading for this strategy development using that same water quality model. We'll have to make some assumptions. We don't know exactly, you know, how much salt is being applied to every single parking lot, as we discussed earlier, but there's some good literature from the state on chloride application rates, especially for people who have taken the smart salting training. And then we'll have to make some assumptions or maybe do some outreach to private applicators to understand what those rates might range. And then we also have the known areas, you know, of impairments in at-risk water bodies, and we can continue to look at those trends and use hotspot monitoring data or ice out monitoring data, excuse me, to help inform this as well. So the overall outcome of this task would be to have, similar to the watershed approach to retrofit projects or the WARP, a layer or a map of sorts that can help us identify the priority areas for where chloride loading might be the highest to district water bodies. And then that will help us inform where to look and target our activity. And then using that information, we can come up with implementation strategies to reduce chloride loads across the different district programs. And then, you know, along with defining what those strategies look like, we would consider chloride reduction metrics, so the actual load reductions, the costs, at least at a planning level, of what those strategies might be, an implementation schedule, and other cost benefit information. And that would all get tied back to the implementation table of the watershed management plan. And then, you know, all of these strategies we're hoping to align with a lot of what the district is already doing through its normal operations, or identifying potential new pathways for implementing the reduction strategies. And so the next couple slides, I just have some examples through brainstorming of this scope, what these might look like. This is not comprehensive or exhaustive. Maybe some of these won't rise to the top as part of the reduction strategy development, but just to give you all a sense of what the outcome of this document might look like. So for example, in the communications and engagement category, we might be able to partner with existing contacts, like I said, at private properties, through some existing programs, through our contacts with partner cities, to help maybe estimate chloride application rates or determine what their chloride reduction efforts look like, and if we can partner on that. The grit giveaway, which I think Ashley's going to talk about, is another great example of, you know, it is a tangible like chloride reduction. You know, we're doing something physical, but it's also more of a behavioral change and kind of I don't know, engaging way to work with people to think of alternative ways to reduce salt use. Through the monitoring program, we can continue or enhance our chloride sampling at ice out or, you know, throughout the growing season. We can then adapt our management of these water bodies based on those results each year, and then also look at other potential inflow points to critical water bodies. So again, using that ice out data to zoom in on hotspots and maybe intensively monitor those locations for a few years to better understand if chloride loads are a concern there. Through our grant programs, we can, using the information, prioritize chloride funding for chloride reduction projects, like I already mentioned. We can also, you know, amend the application to include questions specifically related to chloride. Maybe some of those are the ones we've already asked the city of Woodbury, or we come up with others or other requirements for monitoring that we include as part of chloride projects that are funded by district grants. Through the regulatory program, we could consider chloride reduction standards as part of our stormwater rules, incorporating elements of the low salt design, if you all are familiar with those concepts. So that would be maybe more for redevelopments or new developments that are reconfiguring, you know, parking lots, for example, where we want catch basins really close to where water is melting, so that water doesn't freeze on the parking lot and increase the need for salt. And then under projects and research, this one is a little bit more open-ended, but there's a lot of opportunity, and we had University of Minnesota about potential research projects they'd be interested in partnering on. But there's still a lot of unknown around chloride, especially chloride reduction. So there could be opportunities to test pilot projects for removing chloride through, you know, small-scale reverse osmosis systems, or more research on heated pavements, or, you know, permeable pavements and reducing chloride. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and we can identify some of those projects, or identify, you know, what we'd look for in a project that the district might want to take on under these implementation strategies. And then with all that information, we would develop a chloride reduction strategy document. Like I said, it would be tied really closely to the watershed management plan. But having our own document for chloride reduction would allow the district to be a little more flexible and update that document, and then just have the watershed management plan reference the chloride reduction strategy document, so that as new information becomes available, as, you know, technology changes, as goals are being met, we can continue to adapt that and develop new versions of the CRS that is still aligned with the watershed management plan, but is a little bit more nuanced and detailed. So our next steps, would love to hear your thoughts on all of this tonight, and we have some time for discussion, I think, but we would finalize the scope of developing this document. And, you know, there might be an opportunity yet this year to get a head start on compiling a lot of this data. I know we from the monitoring team, we got some of that data already from the ice out monitoring this year. So digging into that and identifying potential monitoring locations for next year already. And then preparing for the Public Works Forum in January as well for early city engagement on this topic. And then diving into, you know, identifying those priority areas, and then working through the issue identification as part of the plan update. So I do have some, you know, questions for thought here, but happy to take any additional ones, or Ashley, Paige, Tina, feel free to add anything I might have missed in the presentation. And I'm gonna get a glass of water.
just to set the stage, and maybe Tina, you could help me with this. We are going to go deep in what to do about chloride as we build up the plan. Obviously, Tyler's an expert here. We should ask the questions, but we're gonna have multiple opportunities to take a run and refine, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yeah, so I mean, basically what Tyler was here to present to you is, you know, the scope summary of the work that we're gonna embark on over the next several months. But it will be integrated into, you'll be hearing more as we're going along and identifying goals, action items, and implementation items for the plan. So it'll kind of go hand in hand.
And so if there's, I'm gonna give this as an example. One of the comments that I wanted to make is in my learning and preparation for this, there are multiple states that have implemented unique chloride mechanisms. And I just want to ensure as you guys look, it's not just local that we consider, but more across the states. Like Wisconsin has a rich history of road salt reports. Michigan, New Hampshire, and even in New York, some of the upstate areas where there's some unique pathways for managing chlorides. Just ensure that your scope of review is broader than just Minnesota.
One thing that I would suggest is, that we all know the 230 number. And from a regulatory standpoint, that's probably should change, but likely won't anytime soon. But I think in the strategy, it would be important to kind of step away from that regulatory context and maybe do, in background, it's mentioned, I think it's 70 to 100 milligram per liter is a more realistic aquatic life sort of effect threshold. And so I'm thinking if there would be probably, but an effort to look at the literature. What are some of the, I mean, at that standard, before I left PCA, I kind of dug into the standard. I know it's based on 1970s. I mean, we're 50 years later, and there's tons, hundreds, thousands of articles and research that could bring us a lot closer to an understanding of kind of a realistic threshold. And so I think that's something we ought to have within our grasp and understanding within the strategy.
Sure.
Yeah, we brought that up again last time with the reuse comments that some of the managers aren't interested in using reuse because of the impact on their grass. So, well, first of all, Tyler, thanks for the comprehensive discussion. And I would like to kind of echo what Bella said. There is a lot of information that we already have based on the great ice out information that Eric and everyone has already collected. So we kind of have a good idea of where the hotspots already are. And there's a lot of, I mean, this isn't a last year's problem, right? So there's a ton of information in terms of who's putting out the salt, where is it coming from? And it's pretty easy to find out, well, if MnDOT's putting it on, where are they going? If the county is doing it, well, we know where the county roads are. So, and we also know that they have made huge progress, even down to the city level in many cases in terms of trying to reduce it. I'm not against taking a very comprehensive approach. I just would hesitate to say, and I know this isn't what we'll do, but the last thing I would want us to do is to wait for all of this to be developed before we actually do something. Because I think some of it's kind of like just right between the eyes. You kind of know where some of the big issues.
I think you summarized it so well. I always like to operate on what is the short-term win in this particular regard. I do agree with what Stephanie said, the hotspots seem to be known. The question that I wrote, just to build on what she was saying, is it cities, companies, counties, residents? It's not clear where our short-term win is in that way in terms of partnership. I also have seen, building on that, a lot of folks enjoy gamification. Not saying that we have to turn it into a video game, although that would be an amazing thing to see you do. But if we could find some way of rewarding in some of these partnerships, it's one thing to say, hey, train you up on low salt usage. I've seen other states do permitting programs in which somebody gets certified as something like that. I know we have something similar, but then is there another way of recognizing and rewarding these folks as we go? So just think through. I love education. I think it's super important, but a lot of the time people need to be incentivized, and it just would be nice to see. And it does seem like there's some other places that we could do that.
So building on what Bob said, what Ash is going to be talking about later on in terms of one of the ideas of the partnership. I think that's a great one to expand the reach at the right level, whether or not it's not necessarily even the residential side, it's hitting those. We have a great network already. All the people that we have provided partnerships to, all the churches, all the commercial sites, they're kind of on our side. So it would be great to use those as perhaps maybe not. Maybe those are some of the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the kind of communication and outreach and just educating people and challenging some concepts, precepts. I know a low-hanging fruit irritant to me. Well, what's the safe salt again? I'm thinking magnesium chloride, calcium chloride versus sodium chloride. Well, it's all chloride. And kind of debunk that safe salt concept. It's chloride we're interested and concerned about. I really am, let me also say, I meant to follow up on what Stephanie said. Tyler, I think you gave the presentation, but my sense is you and staff, and there's been a lot of collective work and thought already to get us to this point, and I think you framed it and scoped it well. Not something that just kind of came together. There's been a lot of intentional work, and I want to compliment that work up to this point, because it's going to be really important to have a scope and a framework from which to move forward on this, and I think it's well played. I really want to kind of focus then on the monitoring. Yeah, we've got some really great data. I would caution us as we think about adding any to focus only on kind of the high level interest waters, the lakes. Our creeks are the ones that are moving some of this stuff. Our wetlands are potentially places that are reservoirs and hotspots. Ponds we're used to thinking about as being, recipients, but ponds and wetlands are not necessarily the same thing. So just in terms of how we think about monitoring and how we kind of package how the system is really working is something that I think valuable to really think through from the monitoring standpoint, not kind of one-off. So this is, the trend here. How's the system working within that subwatershed could be valuable.
Some really good points. Ben, Gabby, any words from y'all's end?
Digesting, I guess, still.
That's okay. We'll have multiple runs.
You guys are gonna see this time and time and time again.
Not salt again.
Saving the hard questions for Ashley. So. It's a
Ready.
financial.
Oh, man.
You good, Ben?
Yeah, I'm good for now. I was just kind of on Mark's line of thinking. I was that first map where you've done the sampling and kind of hatch out areas that are draining to the Mississippi. I would just hope that, I don't think it would be kind of discluded from any grant applications in the future, but just because it leaves our watershed doesn't mean it's not still pollutant.
Yeah, so just that map is for current use, and so that is just because we know we don't have that kind of data. So I think that's part of the strategy is that we're planning to incorporate that, and that those areas will not be neglected, but under current information that we're prioritizing with that MPCA standards, those just kind of fall out of those areas. So thank you for bringing it up. But yeah, there'll be a whole new map in the actual document that will summarize that prioritization and include all the areas.
Sarcastically, it's always amazing when you measure something, you notice problems. I just, as you think through how we display it, I often think the public, if more up to speed with the numbers, might have a similar reaction, frankly. So just, I like the engagement, just double down on data and how we use it will be critical to the success of the chloride strategy.
I agree. 230 is not far from 250, and I think 250 is where you can. So for people on, low sodium diets, sodium is also in that. So.
I did not know that 250. I'm gonna write that down. Tidbit I can share.
I think the 230 originally is set from drinking water standards and less on toxicity to actual biota. So
Yeah.
it's so it's a great point when you bring up like what levels of toxicity are we actually considering. Canada's are half of what we're using. So
We're still seeing a widespread problem at 230, which is concerning. So
Right.
Well, and that's,
yeah.
that number is not gonna change anytime
Right.
soon, even though there's a lot of people within the state, the PCA and other places that would like this to change.
Yeah.
And it would probably be great to know, but the reality is that that won't happen until, first of all, EPA comes out with new guidance. That's not happening in the near future, at least. There's a lot of other things that EPA is focused on. So it seems like we need to chart our own waters in some respects. There's gonna still be that safe framework under which we'll work.
Tyler, thank you so much.
thank you all.
I'm gonna propose we move to 10B.
Thank
You
you,
guys,
Tyler.
Yeah.
how are we going to use the money to solve this problem, Ashley?
First, I have to talk about how good we did this year. All right, let's see if we can figure out the share. The green button in the center. Okay. Cool. Okay. So yeah, I am gonna talk about our 2025 summary and then the 2026 looking ahead plans. Just a quick. Okay, there we go. Quick highlight for where we're at in the year. We still have a month left. I know that there's 2 more applications in my inbox that haven't gotten approved yet. But right now we're sitting at 60 total applications. The majority of those being residential, which is consistent with years past. Interesting to see we didn't have any large property from church and commercial this year. That's a difference of 2 for each of those from last year. So as well as a reduction in the government ones. And I have some suspicions on those ones, but In general, the last 3 years, we've averaged in the fifties, low fifties. And so prior to 2023, the average was 25 to 30 grants approved per year. And so, it'll be interesting to see what it looks like going forward, but ooh, touchy. So the map shows where all of the projects were from this year. Just also note that we've got 2 targeted retrofits on there as well. You can see we're kind of spaced out all over the district, and we've hit a fairly good distribution. So let's see. This is just summarizing all those projects, pretty much identical, or is identical to what you guys saw in the budget status update. Just highlighting that we did have a lot of habitat restorations for landowners this year, as well as a decent chunk of rain gardens. So those made up the majority of projects, but I will say a good chunk of the funds came down from the priority project areas. These are all really similar to last year's numbers as well. And feel free to jump in with questions if you have any on any of the slides. Should be able to move pretty fast through a good chunk of them. So this is just the overall summary for the entire program, which started in 2006. And so these numbers here are just truly what dollars have we spent versus how many projects have we spent it on. This is a reduced cost from last year, which would indicate that we funded a few more projects that didn't cost quite as much. So last year we were sitting at just shy of $8 million spent. This year we're just over 8.25.
We have a sense, because some of these projects are reimbursable up to 50% full cost, and some 75. So it's leveraging other resources. Do we have any sense of those other resources in that kind of span of 06 to now? So you get the 8.33 million. That's our money. I'm wondering how much that leverage is. It more like 12 million or something?
Yeah,
like
we do actually. I can pull that number pretty quickly. I think I can. Database tracks that. So we track total project cost versus total spent and reimbursed on it. I think the database goes back that far. So that should be a fairly quick number that I see Paige might be pulling up right now.
I don't think I'll get it that quick.
but yeah, so we can pull that number. If we can't get it here shortly, we can send that out. But yeah, it's we're saving a lot of money for folks, as well as putting a good chunk of money back into those resources. So
do you have a sense of how many of these projects are still maintained?
Yes, we do try and inspect actually I will say no. Anything particularly to residential, if it is outside of its 5 years from installation, it's out off the radar to some extent. It's no longer in our inspection list. So that's a good question.
It'd be interesting.
It'd be interesting to go back and try and do full inspections on all,
or at least cite,
survey of some sort, 10% or something.
Even like a Google Maps.
I will say I would say a lot of stuff, especially if it's over that 10-year mark, is probably going to be in rough shape if it's a residential. Those larger scale projects, whether they're city, church, school, those kinds of projects, those have those 20-year maintenance agreements. Those also tend to have a larger community involvement, so those projects tend to stay better maintained, or we do see projects coming back at that 10, 15, 20-year mark, even on the residential side, and asking for like, hey, it got out of hand, what can we do? So we'll work with some homeowners on that to evaluate whether or not if it's outside of its life expectancy, it might just be a full rehab and a new current project. Or if it's, maybe on the shorter side and it was just bad maintenance habits, then we could look at doing the maintenance grant and helping them kickstart that process. But yeah, that's an interesting ask.
I think, Mary, when you started like 2019, 2020, they were all
Good.
inspected then. Maybe not all good,
Good,
but all
okay.
inspected. So like we updated what was still in place or, had been filled in or whatnot, but so that's
Yeah.
been
It was like
6 or 7 years now.
Yeah, I would say out of all those, you maybe have one or two failing and maybe
Yeah.
one that got filled and out of hundreds of inspections. So it's usually pretty good.
Yeah.
How many grants have we turned away?
I mean, hard to say. So there's not, usually by the time they apply, like Ashley and when I was doing it and then working with the conservation districts, we're good at vetting those. So good at let someone apply or do the design if it wasn't going to be a good project. So definitely, I mean, I think Brian and Lori, who do the inspection or the technical design for us, keep track of how many site visits they do versus how many go to concept plan and then how many apply. So we have those numbers.
It seems like it's ripe for a tagline for how we're stewarding some of the levies and dollars. And that's what I was thinking in my head. It seems like if the answer is most who apply for a grant through the process get the dollars, it's a really nice tagline.
I think that's what we tell people when they are like, I don't know if I should apply. We're like, oh, we're doing the design for you, so you're going to get the grant.
Yeah.
Right. It's not going through all this work to apply and then they tell you, no.
That's good.
Another nice tagline number that would be good to have is, again, that 8.8 or 8.33 million, 634, 24.
Right.
Yeah. We talk about in some of our own projects, number of pounds of phosphorus, 470 or whatever. Is there a way that we could extrapolate and make an estimate of this is what the reduction?
We track that already.
credits?
Yeah, we work
So,
with BAR to track all of that. So I believe like the native habitat restorations don't get any credit for those things, but any water quality VMP is already tracked.
Yeah.
And so.
And that would be another nice number.
We could add that to,
Yeah.
It seems like next year will be the 20-year anniversary of the program, so it might be a nice time to compile some of that to share. We should maybe have a party.
Parties are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes in some of the plan sets, there's like the mix calculations in them, which have the removals. Sometimes they're on different plan sheets now. I'm bombard the packet with a whole bunch, but so for them, yeah, we're tracking and stuff. So, and then I think even give that back to some of our TMDLs and stuff like that. So
Yeah, we do that and it feeds into our own cost benefits information that you receive when we look at projects.
Maintenance grants. So this started in 2018, where we started offering 50% coverage up to $1,500 a year for 5 years. And so this was to really incentivize people to install projects and to make sure these projects were successful. We know those first 1 to 3 years are critical on projects. And so making sure that they have the resources, whether that's the money for buying materials or education resources. We're also, as staff, sending out newsletters and maintenance tips and tricks. And so between those newsletters, I think NR does some news blasts as well, and is a regular newsletter, The Ripple Effect, will highlight some of that stuff as well. So we make sure that all of our grantees are on those mailing lists, so that they're getting that information. This year to date, we have 20 applications approved, totaling 22,595. And so that brings us to a total of 85 currently approved. I should look. I think the 85 is total approved since 2018, but the 77,000, that is the total. That is just of current grants that are active. So the grants that were approved from 2018 to 2020 are no longer active. Those are closed. Those funds that were allocated just go back. And so those are marked 0. So the 77 is what is currently allocated to active grants. 85 is the total number that had been approved. So we've gotten really great feedback on it. Some of the feedback that we did receive was about how to do maintenance. And so it worked out that Ramsey County Master Gardeners were looking for some education and I forget if it was education outreach, volunteer hours specifically to meet their requirements for volunteering as a Master Gardener. And so what we did was this year we partnered with the Ramsey County Master Gardeners to launch the Waterwise Garden Mentor Program. This was specifically designed to improve project owner knowledge about maintenance, specifically for plant identification, tips, tricks, techniques, as well as weed management strategies. And then if they did have any questions about general aesthetic or those kinds of things. Pretty successful. We offered 3 different days for the months of May through September. And then there was 2 different site visits on each of those days. And so it was interesting learning what the Master Gardeners know versus what we need them to know to do these site visits. So there was a little bit of training where we had a well-informed and knowledgeable Master Gardener partnered with someone who was, yes, Simba. And she was partnered with some other folks who were learning but really wanted to be in this capacity. So we had good success. We had a lot of interest in it. I'd love to spend time with everybody and do plant ID, but I just don't have that capacity. So this was a great way to be able to provide that hands-on like help with identification, but in a way that we're expanding capacity. So
are you interested in possibly reaching out to the Washington County Master Gardeners?
Yes. So I think we've touched base to some extent with, I think even water steward, somebody. Lauren does a lot of the communication with the different partners and then says, here, these people are interested. And I said, yes. So I'll just note the Waterwise Garden Mentor Program was not limited to only Ramsey County residents. So we did have the Ramsey County Master Gardeners going over to Washington County for some sites. And I think now that we kind of see where the interest is and like workflow of how we actually schedule these and plan around it, yeah, we're definitely going to be pulling in other folks between water stewards, Washington County Master Gardeners, and kind of pulling who's interested, who has the knowledge and expertise, and what does that look like? Do we need to continue partnering a knowledgeable with a less knowledgeable, and kind of work that out? But yeah, it was fairly successful in my opinion. I got lots of good feedback from folks, lots of people happy to have that kind of help on site. So
Well, I think it was nice. Some of the hours you offered were outside of business hours.
All hours were, there was 2 weeknights in the month and then a weekend. And so all of those were outside of regular, standard business hours for staff. So letting folks pick and choose, and they were able to rank kind of where they wanted to, what priority days and times. And so yeah, it was good. Okay, the fun stuff, looking forward. Okay, so this is very similar to what we've seen in past years. These are the priorities of watersheds. There's no changes proposed. There hasn't been any significant changes to drainage patterns or delistings for impairments, any kind of modeling data that would suggest that these should change. So we are recommending that these stay where they're at. Similarly, so the yellow lines are going to be those priority subwater drainage, subwatersheds. And then the blue shading is the priority or the vulnerability levels for our social vulnerability index, which uses CDC data. This was developed and implemented in 2024. And so again, no big data shifts or changes. So we're proposing that it stays the same. These shaded areas based on the level of vulnerability can ask for additional funding or assistance to the grant program. And so what that looks like is typically either we can do direct payments to contractors, or look at even potentially dollar amounts and percentages of what a project's funded at. So we haven't had a ton of folks use that. We also haven't, we have tried to do some targeting outreach in some of the highest priority areas. It was poorly timed. Next by-election year last year. So, and then some of the volunteers that were involved in that with Green Corps, Peace Corps funding got a little bit lost there, but still on staff, on my prioritization to work with our communications and engagement team to target these areas and really see, because if we go back a few slides, just where the projects are, they tend to also not be in these high vulnerability areas. So the other note I will say is, as the watershed management plan is updated in the priority areas that Zan Associates used and some of that public engagement, I'm gonna be working with Lauren to look at how can we utilize maybe some of those contacts or those groups of people to reach these areas and provide information about our grant program. And take some of that feedback about translating documents and process and that kind of stuff to improve the efficiencies and the access and visibility to the program in these areas. Proposed coverage for next year is all the same, with the addition of 2 lines, the equipment purchasing and the partner grant. I will touch on these in future slides, but I just wanted to have them on here so that you guys can see how they compare to other BMPs and funding and cost share.
I apologize, actually. So I know chloride is the other 150K increase. Which bucket does that fall into?
Priority area and non-priority areas.
Okay, so it's
Because the-
split between those two.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I didn't make that super clear on this. And that's partially because it will be using the priority mapping from the chloride. So not necessarily the subwater. I mean, they're almost the same. The high priority subwatersheds are also compared for chloride typically. So very similar mapping. So that would be just the same distinction, but same funding.
Based on the mapping we saw from Tyler.
Yeah. And that would be just mostly for 2026 as we move into that chloride reduction strategy document.
These dollar amounts that are shown here are what we'll pay to, what the grant.
Max.
Yeah. Yep.
And then those buckets, but that like funding buckets that we have are.
Yeah.
And so we are just making sure, because I know there's actions tied to this, we are saying we are comfortable in 26 with the current priority areas as scoped.
Yep. All right, enhanced street sweeping. So just a quick highlight from this year. We don't have the data, but because they're currently actively sweeping right now. So as soon as we have that and get that processed, we'll have a presentation. I think we were able to get it to you guys in February last year, which will summarize it, what we've seen from since it started, 2022. Street sweeping's a really cheap BMP. So this year we only had 3 grants come in. And so of that 250,000 that is prioritized, 217 of it was allocated to 3 different grants. In addition to just the grants, we did co-host a clean sweep workshop with the U of M this year. So that was cool. It was hosted in Roseville and pushed and marketed to all of the cities within our watershed district. So we had a lot of folks from our district as well as in the immediate areas. It was great to hear their perspectives and kind of get some updated information from our past surveys and work with them. So and so future planning, piloting equipment purchasing grants. To date, we have approved a grant for a brine maker, which falls interestingly between, I think, street sweeping and chloride reduction. It has not been constructed yet. It is in construction process and hopefully will be finished next spring. But looking at how do we fund equipment for cities? Do we fund equipment for cities? And so staff are currently proposing to, yes, fund the purchase of equipment, but keeping the funding amount proportional to the amount of the city within the district. So this is using the existing modeling from the street sweeping study that FAR did, which went through and had heat maps of red is high priority, we want sweeping in these areas, green not so much. They took in a variety of data and variables to determine that in the model between canopy cover, of upstream, downstream resources. And so this request is coming specifically from White Bear Lake at this time. They have not applied, but they put feelers out. They wanted to know where we were sitting. And so staff, Paige and I, we worked with FAR to kind of review our existing program, look at surrounding areas, what are they doing for equipment purchases, and then look at what we how does it fit within the current grant program as well as the current modeling. And so for White Bear Lake specifically, they're one of our highest priorities mapped in our street sweeping model. And this is due to that canopy cover, as well as the BMP resources for actual treatment. And so they also, excuse me.
Sorry, so you said brine, but you're talking street sweeping.
Yeah, so as far as like equipment purchases to date, the only other kind of equipment purchase that was not a physical BMP was the brine maker.
And for that one, we set that percentage, like 35% of
Oakdale
Oakdale's in our district, so we
Yep.
funded 35%.
Yeah, so because it's kind of that question we've had, I think every time street sweeping comes up, how do we know that the money we're spending is staying in our district? How do we know that? And so one way we can kind of work that is funding basis, right? A street sweeper is going to cost upwards of $300,000. And so the city of White Bear Lake happens to be about 30%, I think, of the district. And so 30% of the 300 is $100,000. So
of the cities.
of the city, yeah. And so that's right around that $100,000 mark. It's in line with street sweeping current funds. And so what we're proposing is, as a pilot, that we would fund the purchase of one up to that $100,000 specifically, and that would be proportional again. So if the city didn't have that much, it would be proportional. We'd adjust that, but it would max out at 100,000. And we would have additional requirements on it. So we've gone through the whole purpose is enhanced street sweeping. So the street sweeper has to, the city has to implement enhanced street sweeping. And so
what are the additional requirements? What would be some of those?
So the additional requirement would be that they have to do the additional sweepings. And so then, and they already, as part of the street sweeping program, have to report on lane miles and materials collected. That's how we make sure our cost benefit keeps making sense for these. So in addition to that, requiring lost my train of thought, sorry. Yeah, requiring that they do not just their normal sweepings, but they do enhanced street sweepings. We have, based on the data they shared with us, that the most beneficial sweeping for them would be for fall. So we would want to see that extra sweeping in the fall time. And then we're considering other requirements, such as requiring that all operators are trained in street sweeping. Those workshops are hosted pretty regularly throughout the year. So making sure that staff are trained on enhanced street sweeping practices. Those workshops tend to go over why it's important, what does it do, what does it mean, and so making sure we're getting operators to understand the importance of why they're doing this.
I've been supportive of street sweeping. As I
Mhm.
sit back and think about the pilot outside of White Bear Lake, what other cities would be more likely to jump on to enhance street sweeping with the availability of this type of grant?
So,
Like, is this the biggest need, or is it similar to some of the things that we've seen be very effective in terms of outreach and publications and getting more involvement?
mhm.
And we only started this in a couple of years, and so I'm just kind of curious, is this like a reason cities have communicated we're not interested in pursuing it?
Yeah.
And is that a large reason why? Just trying to understand.
So I would say the top reasons that we've been given between our surveys and then the clean sweep workshop. And I've sat in a few of different ones throughout the metro area, and the biggest concern is always staff time and vehicle time and maintenance. And so that's been a big restriction of they either don't have staff capacity to do it, or they don't have the funds to really do that extra, to put time into an extra sweeping. They'll do their bare minimum. And so that's where we're like, this makes sense to support it, because they're not gonna use their sweeper if it's old and breaking down more than they have to use it. And so if we can help support the purchase of a new model, especially if we can encourage them to go to a more effective model. So there's different types of street sweepers, and they can have different abilities for actual material pickup. So working with the city on that as well. And so
So you mentioned a couple, sorry, Mark.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of things.
Yeah.
We have used grants in the past to fund interns. Is it better to fund the staff, help supplement the staffing, or to help with the equipment? Because we can create the equipment or grant them the equipment, they still have to pay somebody to do it with the staff time. I'm just trying to figure, is that for our first foray, is it just purchasing grants, or should it be, well, we can supplement for a pilot with your city for a season just to see the benefits? I'm just trying to tease out what's.
So to date, the intern has been data collection staff time. So we haven't funded any actual staff time for street sweeping.
Yeah,
activities.
totally agree with that. I'm just trying to figure out, is that if you got a range of survey answers,
Yeah.
I want to ensure that the top one is, oh, we just don't have the equipment, not that, oh, we don't have the staff and time to do it. And that's it.
Yeah, and so for White Bear specifically, they're one of the cities where we've actually just paid for a contractor to come in and sweep. And so that's why they're a great one to look at this and make sure. One of the requirements we're contemplating putting on it as well is you have to do this enhanced street sweeping for X amount of years following this purchase. So not just your normal street sweeping, you have to do this enhanced program for X amount of years following this. Bassett Creek Water Management Commission has tried this, to maybe not the most success of enforcing that requirement, but I think it's, these cities are interested and they want to do the enhanced, and this is what they're asking in this instance from White Bear Lake of, this is what would help us get to that.
Yeah, I guess I'm listening to your conversation and it kind of sounds like, to me at least, buying a new piece of equipment is a significant overhead, a significant expense, having that, and then you got to staff it and you got to maintain it. And so I'm wondering if a lot of the cities, if they are faced with the enhanced, if they wouldn't rather get assistance with, hey, if you give us money to rent, not buy, but we rent, or to contract. I mean, those are two, very viable kinds of alternatives to buying equipment. So I'm trying to get a sense of, are we willing to, boundaries of this additional 100,000 include those kinds of things?
Well,
Contracting and renting is
They're probably already in that 250.
Right, so we've already as part of our enhanced street sweeping grant program, that's been one of the abilities that we would fund, so.
And we have funded contracted street sweeping for the city of White Bear Lake.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm really asking is, okay, so it's total pot of 350. Are we going to be strong on that 100,000's gotta be for some kind of an acquisition or something similar? Or can it blend into the
Oh,
250?
yeah.
If that seems the appropriate course?
Yeah, so I think current intent for staff would be, you know, pending discussion would be that 100 stays prioritized for equipments purchased specifically. And that might be boom replacement or other things that might not be specifically a whole
Sure,
street
could be,
sweeper. So we would prioritize that 100 within the 350 and just carry that. And then when we see that to X amount of date, I think typically we're requiring any street sweeping applications to come in by, I think, May or June 15th. And so we prioritize those equipment funds up till that day. And then once it is passed, I would say we'd open whatever's left of the 350 to the requests that are coming in. So for the most part, I would see them blending, but we prioritize them initially.
So then the ask is 350 for street sweeping with conditions if a county or city wants to purchase.
Yeah. Yep, and it's mostly the 100,000 is mostly being pulled out just to demonstrate that it is something different for you guys. And so it doesn't necessarily need to stay pulled out going forward, but for this first year where this is not a purchase we've supported before. Although it is a purchase that quite a few other districts have supported around us. So it's not new for watershed districts to support the purchase of this kind of equipment, but it is new to us in our program. And so I just wanted to make sure we pulled that out, highlighted it, and then we're able to evaluate if if it makes sense to keep those dollars there. Because it might not make sense to keep it in street sweeper equipment purchase. It might make sense to kick it back and say, nope, we don't want to do equipment. We want to make sure it's in contracted or rented.
And I know we're kind of like splitting hairs. I'm more aligned to where Mark was. I think 350 is fine. I'm happy that this future year we're looking at 100K. But if we ended up having other people come in, and now we're seeing a lot of people are asking for equipment, those are much more sizable types of chunks of money.
Yep.
And so I just want to balance. I don't know which one to prioritize.
Yep.
The equipment one, the contract one, it seems like we are getting a lot of use and mileage out of the dollars with the contract direction that we're taking and the other support that we're providing in the past. I'm just trying to figure out, I'd rather just say your 350 will prioritize as they come. However, we maximize those dollars to have a larger impact on those priority areas. That's more of my concern. So as long as we have those talks.
I think.
Go ahead. Or I was just gonna say, in addition, like you require the reporting when you do the contracting, are you gonna also carry that into the agreement for the equipment? Like you need to give us so that you can actually run a cost benefit and see if it's.
Yep, no, so those requirements are gonna stay
on it.
Yep, all of those will stay, and then we're gonna ask for additional requirements. Potentially tracking GPS location, so we're actually seeing the areas swept. We haven't finalized it completely internally yet of what we would want that to be. But we want to be able to get a cost benefit analysis out of it and say, did this make sense to support this purchase? And so that's why I've got it under the pilot and kind of highlighted. I think.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be this language, then I would say we probably cap equipment purchase at no more than.
Yes, and that is the purpose, is capping, is pulling it out of the 350 to note that it is capped at that 100. That makes it consistent with all other caps within the programming, so.
Yeah, and I think the reason we really wanted to pull this out this time is because we have this request kind of pending or in the back from White Bear Lake, and we wanted to, survey you to see how you feel about, moving forward with that as a pilot.
Yeah, and we did discuss like what happens when everyone starts asking, or what happens when we have 3 requests. The quick short answer is that we would fall back on our prioritization and we would probably have to turn down people. And then, or we could look at expanding the prioritization requirements of maybe it's not just the high priority street sweeping area, it's combining multiple criteria. That's a high priority street sweeping area, in a high priority sub-watershed drainage area in a, with no downstream resources. So there's levels that we can add in as we see a demand increase for it.
I think the reason I'm poking at it so much, and again, very comfortable with the 350, is they were offered similar things for contracting, and they did not take us up on it yet, White Bear Lake, to the maximum effect that we were hoping for. And what they've come back with is, we will buy something if you help us pay for it, and then we'll do it. And yet there's all these other requirements that are going to be needed in place for them to be effective at it. And so it's I'm not hesitant about the 350. I'm just like, okay,
So
100K is a huge investment.
they have been doing enhanced street sweeping via contracted services that we've been paying for through us.
Okay, so
Yeah,
they
so they-
they are one of them that are taking
They
advantage
are
of
one
it.
of them that are taking advantage of it, and so this,
And this is gonna
And
make
they've
them more
been,
effective.
they've been reporting their information, because I recall that there were
there's one
several.
that-
things that
The
were-
contracted-
So this is, yeah,
Yeah, and
this is my concern, is that
yes.
we have all of these requirements and yet.
Yeah, and I think it will be, we haven't had those problems with cities.
Right.
The contracted sweeper is the only one we've had those difficulties getting the data. The cities have been great, they're already tracking that anyways, and so I am not too concerned about the city being able to fulfill those requirements, and I think it would be a quick, you're not going to be reimbursed unless you provide this information.
If I were to reframe what you're trying to say, just to make sure that it's,
Yeah.
the 100K gets us more certainty on the measurable outcomes.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So,
And
and
the-
I
and-
just have one more comment. I mean, the number, my preference is not to put it under the enhanced street sweeping, because that, I understand it's a pilot.
Yeah.
But within the realm of things, then we lock ourselves into, we only look at enhanced street sweeping. How do we know someone else doesn't have anything more critical? And I'm gonna lean on my favorite chloride. So is there, and you've already said there's a brine maker that is in that, has been considered. So that's my only concern, is the total, okay, just limiting it by itself under street sweeping, just.
Well, I guess that's the street sweeping pot of money, right, that we've allocated. Like the brine maker and the other chloride, like the heated sidewalks, that comes out of the other priority area money, so there's other monies available for that.
And the reason it's within the enhanced street sweeping is because we wouldn't fund the purchase of a street sweeper unless they were participating in the enhanced street sweeping program. Because we want to make sure that we are prioritizing those funds in high priority sweeping areas for us, as well as they're going above and beyond.
And I do appreciate you tagging on at one of the requirements, saying, if we do give you the money, we'd like to make sure, and one of the contingencies is that your operators are trained. I think that should be a requirement on any large number, a large amount that we give.
The amount doesn't scare me.
Anything else? Not on this one.
Sounds
Yeah.
So then jumping into the partner grant. And so, a partner grant, I feel like, is gonna cover all the categories of the other grants. But so the overall goal is, it meets our watershed management plan goal by informing and empowering communities. And so the point of this is to leverage the existing relationships of community organizations, particularly to reach some of the historically underserved populations, and make sure that we are supporting organizations, our city partners or public partners, who are encouraging behavior changes that are positively impacting water. And so there's only so much we can do as staff. We only have so much capacity. We have a great communications and engagement program. They are in the schools. They are doing all these other things. And we know that there's still folks that maybe us directly as staff can't reach. And so being able to leverage our partners to be able to go into those communities, and increase knowledge and effectively, change behaviors when it comes to water resource management. And so, the other thing would be supporting climate resiliency. And so being able to support partners, particularly as for some of our nonprofit organizations, some of their funding starts disappearing or has disappeared. And so being able to step in and support that is kind of
like similar to the Boys and Girls Club as a.
they'd be a great partner, or that would apply for this, yeah. And so it would be projects and programs proposed by either public or nonprofit. We really want to limit kind of who is participating so that it is truly going to meet the overall goals and mission of not only the grant program, but the watershed district as a whole. And so an example would be an art event where they're incorporating education about water and resources. And so there's going to be, it might be where water education is the sole purpose and priority of that program or project. And it might be that it's a tangential benefit that is also going to come in, and there's going to be education on it, or there'll be materials on it, or they'll be exposed to something that is district related, water related, even habitat related too. So we've worked with Capital Region Watershed District, who has had a partner grant for I think since 2007. And so we got to hear some about their do's and don'ts, hard lessons learned. And so we're going to shape that program based on some of that feedback. And so we're recommending that of the additional 250 that we've noted in the overall budget increase, that 100,000 of this would be directly prioritized for partner grants.
And we've gotten some interest in these from nonprofit organizations.
Yes. So there's been I wouldn't say quite a few, but there's been plenty of requests where either organizations have come to us with, hey, can you fund this, or can you support this? Sometimes it's art projects that aren't directly related to a physical project, but they're a water feature type thing. And so, or programming for students, it wouldn't be necessarily like garbage cleanups or stuff like that, but events where they're bringing in folks and really trying to change perspectives and get exposure to people.
Some of our partners host events, and if they're gonna have a water focus, then we can support that.
Just to kind of clarify,
Yeah.
this is an additional $250,000 in the stewardship grant program.
Yes.
And it's a separate 250 from, but we're just talking about the enhanced suite. I'm just going-
The
so-
total budget for the stewardship grant program was increased by $250,000. And so
Yeah.
100,000 of that would be earmarked, we'll say bucketed into a partner grant.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna talk about chloride, and that's another, so it's like how we're kind of binning.
Yeah, it's just how we're bringing it, yeah, so the original 1.25 with the additional, 250,000, we told you guys ahead of time, we're asking for that 250 extra, and these are the reasons why. So this partner grant and then the chloride reduction initiatives, which we'll see on the next slide, those are what are filling that 250,000 additional request.
So if I remember correctly, on the CAP region, their number covers approximately 2 years. It's like early 2025 to end of 2026 is just over 100,000.
So their annual budget is about 160 for their program. They've got some pretty strict requirements that they only accept X amount of applications per year. They have requirements about additional pre-application type meetings and those things.
I'm just wondering, based on our numbers, we're gonna be a little bit over theirs on our first year. I love this idea, because that's how you reach people, right? And you allow them to reach them the way that they can, and it would be great to not just allow them to do their message, but also to allow them to take their interpretation on the messages that the district has.
Integrate those.
Yes, exactly. Strengthen it.
Yeah, and I can't remember, we've roughed out a program guide for what it would look like, funding, deadlines, those kinds of things. We haven't finalized it yet completely. But I've been working super closely with Lauren, and all of these grants will be jointly reviewed with the communications and engagement program, just so that we make sure we're not duplicating efforts, or we're actually just increasing type, because we already do so much. And so making sure that what is being done fits with our goals and missions, and is enhancing our existing programming. I think we haven't decided on the 1 year, 2 year deadline yet. We've seen pros and cons from Cap Region. So the 100,000 would be this year, and we would reevaluate that kind of allocation next year, depending how the interest goes.
I'm comfortable with the allocation. I just want to ensure that we see the first few that come through.
Yep. Yep, we do have, we're anticipating putting a minimum grant requirement on it, which is gonna be, I think, 5,000, so they would essentially all be coming.
Yeah, I just,
And we have that minimum on there so that we're not,
and these dollars aren't subject to us having to do a board motion to move across buckets, so I figure if we need to, we can allocate them elsewhere.
We're not expecting any kind of complimentary effort or match or anything like that. It's just to speak.
so we are currently we're currently talking through that. We've got it rough 50 to 100% funding. So depending on the type of activity and maybe the level of interest, type of activity, and like the actual impact to how it meets our goals. I think at first glance, we would be doing the no match, but if we need to start scaling back because the whole programming that they're proposing doesn't meet the criteria, we would make sure that we're kind of focusing really on funding the portions of their programming that would meet the goals of the grant. So
I would encourage you to really think that through and build the rule system.
Yeah.
So that it's clear and consistent.
Yep, and
Recognizing it's as a pilot, essentially, it could change, but
I will note that Lauren has a lot more extensive knowledge and experience in working with communities and volunteer groups. There's a lot of things that I've learned in this process and when talking with Cap Region that I hadn't realized were maybe barriers. I thought they were simple things to add in. And so making sure that we're reducing barriers and making it clear, concise, transparent, and translating when we need to and all that stuff. So it's been on the forefront of our mind of how do we make this.
Maybe if I were to just, so are people comfortable with the amount of allocation? Because I think we're going to need to look at some of the rules because they are kind of hard to quantify in terms of the outcomes we're trying to shoot for. But if we're all comfortable with the dollars, I figure we keep going.
There will be tracking requirements. So same with how our communications program currently tracks of what's the audience reached, though all that stuff will be in as requirements.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking, let's see the end of it. I mean, I'm
I
happy.
think Ashley can bring back when her and Lauren
That's what
kind
I'm
of work
thinking.
out all the details of that program. She can bring back.
So then into the remaining 150 of the additional $250,000 budget request is looking at chloride reduction initiatives and just kind of prioritizing grant dollars within the stewardship grant budget to push at these types of projects. Some past grants that we've issued, as I mentioned, the brine maker at Oakdale, as well as past heated sidewalks and pavement at the city of Woodbury. It's future planning. Obviously, we're going to have the strategy document, which will help us actually have a much more solid framework, I should say, to actually prioritize these. Current prioritization would be based off of that NPCA mapping of impaired at risk. And then funding would be based off of assuming that all chloride is bad chloride, kind of that idea that if you're in a priority, those high impaired subwatersheds, you'd be at that 100% funding up to 100,000. And then if you're in an at-risk subwatershed, you'd be at the 75% funding up to that 50,000.
Very much would prefer to see this broken out as a separate one than
Okay,
priority
I can
order,
do
not priority, because it's an initiative that we need to have like very publicly viewable.
Okay.
And I'd love to track it more directly as opposed to have it in the priority.
No problem.
And my only comment is, if chloride is such a big deal, I'm personally a little disappointed that, the 250,000, is 150,000 for chloride.
You would like to see it higher?
I would like to see it higher.
I had a very similar comment, it's like 150
I
enough.
mean, again,
So,
it's just like.
I understand,
Yeah.
but that's, I'm just.
So we do
saying
have
my
more
personal-
money, I mean, 1.5 million, right? So
Yeah.
we just are saying, so we
Yeah.
could, I
We can
mean,
go
say that
over.
budget
Yeah.
is bigger,
I,
you know,
that's just my,
Yeah.
my initial reaction.
without having to
Yeah.
change the budget.
Which is a big reason I like keeping it as a separate thing, so then we can
Yeah.
focus and measure it separately. I just don't want to get it. I know you guys have the tracking mechanisms, but all the public documentation, having it separate, I
Yeah.
think would be better.
And I think, you know, because we do track that month to month in that status report,
Yes,
we can
that's,
always just say we need more in this.
that's exactly
In the
it.
I
bucket,
appreciate that.
we should move it over.
No more questions? Okay.
What I think Tyler mentioned this in his presentation, but we'll be talking with our public works forum about this, so. At this time, you know, you've seen the couple applications that we've, from Oakdale and Woodbury that have come in, so. You know, once cities know that this grant is out there, maybe they'll be preparing projects and coming to us, and we'll see that
Make
number.
better sense.
Yeah.
And I could see, like, I know other cities have had requests to, you know, fund some of the training requirements and certifications to make sure their staff are all trained and certified. I think there's potential to fit that in this.
Yeah, look, I'll throw it out there,
Yeah.
the forum with cities.
Mhm.
I think it's probably focused primarily at public works. And I would
Yeah.
encourage that we make the effort to extend it to city natural resources or environment department.
Yeah, so they are welcome to invite.
Yeah, they may,
Yes,
but
we
they
call
may-
it the public works forum,
But we do have a lot
Yeah,
of those people
but-
on our list.
Yes.
Right, I'm just thinking that an environmental type department
Yes.
or natural resource department within might have a slightly different focus on, oh, there's something we might be able to do with chloride
Yes.
versus public works, is, you know, thinking Brian, just,
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
want to make sure that those folks within the cities are equally aware,
Definitely.
just small piece.
All right, other things that we're doing, besides just the grants is our Get Gritty campaign. We're following the low salt, no salt model. Essentially, we're just, instead of all salt practices, we're picking one little behavior and we're saying, hey, stop using salt, let's use grit. We're really trying to go at this as a grassroots effort of one behavior change at a time. And using that residential peer pressure to get residents to be like, oh, salt's bad. And then as they go into either their place of employment, their place of worship, their big box stores, they can say, hey, why are you doing this? And so the low salt, no salt communities have seen great success with residents just putting that pressure on bigger salt applicators and making that, using that pressure to get behavior changes. This is only one small piece of what we want to do and what we're doing. And so it's also fairly low stakes and low effort for staff to do this kind of stuff. Working with our local hardware stores to distribute grit. And so not only are we getting extra business for our local businesses, we are bringing people into their stores and, you know, that's a repeat business. And so this behavior change is, you know, if they come back year after year for a few years for free grit, that's a habit that's been formed, or they're already coming to the hardware stores. And so leveraging that as opposed to maybe using offsite locations or locations that were only open during business hours and those kinds of things. So happy to talk more about this like once it launches and or even later. I know we're getting pretty late tonight. I'll just note this is launching to the public at the end of November. So
So you need a couple of actions from us in terms of approval to move forward. We've had a couple of different conversations. So just any parting thoughts before I ask for a motion? It does feel like we're running 3 pilots, so however we find a way to monitor those 3 separate for both public
we have
record,
metrics built into all of them.
just in terms of how we report it in the packet would be really
Okay,
good.
noted.
You guys have all kinds of metrics, and that part I'm not worried about. Okay, so there are effectively 3 that I'm going to bucket, although there are 7 bullets. Do I have a motion to approve the 2026 water quality, equity, and priority areas? The coverage amounts is shown in table 1, and to approve staff to move forward with setting these funding amounts for 20, including the changes as described in the PowerPoint presentation.
Do you want that as 2 separate?
Just
Or
one,
Just one.
just one motion.
Yeah, I try to throw it all together, so it'd be.
Yeah, all right. I will offer that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. Okay. Administrative report.
Wow. I'm not sure how robust I have about the Minnesota Watersheds Conference.
I'm gonna propose that y'all can
Happen.
read documentation on that.
Yeah, I don't.
We need
there's-
delegates though.
We do need to appoint delegates. You know, there's not as much about resolutions because a lot of that was done at the August meeting, although there are 2 new resolutions
Yeah,
that
so-
will be considered. I don't find them all too complicated or controversial, so, especially the one around dates of
Mhm.
levy, I mean, that's not a big deal, so, there was the Region 3 caucus information was sent to you yesterday or today, and I think that there was an update, that I printed it here, in case we had some time. There was some requests for committees, and there'll be, you know, discussion around, a director, for the board from this region. They also, for those that have been there before, they've changed the caucus timing. So it used to be really early in the morning, and now it will be Wednesday afternoon. So just be aware of that change as well. But I do need to know, and I know Emily sent you a reminder, and it's asking by Friday, but I guess for this discussion, we kind of need to know who's planning to go so that we can assign delegates to that.
So I'll be going.
Okay, great. And Gabby is going.
I really like to go, but unfortunately I have a conflict.
I am planning on going.
Okay.
I suggested that I could go, but given personal things, I probably should back out this year.
So I guess maybe it's not, is it maybe, or you plan to?
I need to send you an email tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know if we want to do Gabby and Stephanie as delegates and Ben as alternate then, is that first, for
I think that's a good compliment.
you guys comfortable?
Yeah.
And we can talk more about what that entails.
Yeah.
First year trial by fire, Gabby.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was really anything else in that packet that needed to be discussed. I would take a motion for the delegate appointment, and I'll get that sent to.
Do I have a motion to send Stephanie and as first delegate and Gabby as second delegate to the Minnesota Watersheds Conference?
So moved.
And Ben and Walter.
Oh, and Ben as an alternate with conditions, depending on how he emails.
Moved, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. There you
And
go.
then I would just suggest if you read through the packet of information for both the business meeting and the caucus, and just send any comments out. You can send them to the full board, and then Stephanie and Gabby and Ben can take that background from you or information from you for their decision.
For alternatives, small.
Yeah.
We are planning to have, the watershed workshop.
Oh, yeah.
Watershed plan workshop.
Yeah,
with them,
yeah.
and if we can have a 15-minute discussion if there is a need for it.
Yeah, so there's been some complications in
Oh,
scheduling,
okay.
in scheduling that for next week. And with the next couple of weeks with the holiday, with Thanksgiving, it's difficult. And
You want me
then Minnesota Watersheds is right after that. So I was curious about revisiting the idea of doing, an hour before, or 2 hour and a half before our next board meeting.
December 10th, hour and a half before, start at 5.
Would be our next meeting. We'd have dinner. With that.
You had me at dinner.
If scheduling is a problem, seems like that would be a way to do it.
It does, long day, but I think it'll be good.
Which would then be after the Minnesota Watershed or the conference, but
That December's your long one. We have to prove the budget and a bunch of other things, so
yeah,
we'll
that's,
chat on that.
yeah. The budget stuff usually is pretty quick in December, but
Do they have anticipated presentations, topics?
we have, we'll approve the bids for the safety
CIP.
maintenance and repair. I can't, Brennan, the Coleman Lake Allen treatment, that's also a bid,
That's pretty fast.
bid opening, yeah.
Those business kinds of things.
Yeah,
go
I
further.
don't have, I'll consider what we have on the agenda.
I looked at the action items beforehand,
Yeah.
and they're all targeted toward like the spring, right,
Yeah.
which I feel okay about. Yep. Yeah, sounds good. Everybody agreed?
Yep.
5,
The other thing that was in the packet was about Waterfest
yeah,
and
you can't use Phelan.
potential change in venue. So we're working through some of our questions and figuring out what our plan is. So more to come on that as well.
Might be a real opportunity.
It might be a real.
There's something else.
Yeah. It's just, it's a complicates things, but we'll figure it out.
There's a lot of good places.
Yeah.
Okay. Good stuff. So I'm gonna propose that if you have project or program status updates, that we send them to Tina directly following the meeting, and we can get some answers in that sense. I know I have a handful of questions that I'd like just to send or talk over with you later. Is that acceptable for item number 12? 13, manager comments next month's meeting. We knew this was going to be a long one. That's why we split up the workshop in this. So I'm glad we did that. Perfect. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I second it.
Sweet.
But nobody wants to go.
Hi, Tracy.
Have a good night, everybody.